Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our NKN and Crypto.com live video AMA today. I'm Tina Baker-Taylor, your host, and I am delighted today to be joined by Bruce Lee, co-founder of NKN. Today, most communications need to go through a centralized server where they can be blocked or sabotaged or hacked into or eavesdropped on. The aim of NKN is to solve all of these problems by providing a decentralized solution with blockchain technology. NKN is a kind of peer-to-peer network protocol powered by a public blockchain. It uses economic incentives to motivate internet users to share network connections and utilize unused bandwidth. Pretty exciting stuff, Bruce. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Nina. Good morning. Thanks for inviting me. Glad to be here. And hi, everybody, the Crypto.com fans. I know you guys have tons of them. Glad to hear. I'm Bruce, co-founder of NKN. And so I'm happy to answer anything you want to know about how NKN can be the indispensable Web 3.0 networking infrastructure.
Fantastic. Well, we do have some questions that were posed by the community, so we'll get to those in just a second. But why don't you start us off, Bruce, with a little introduction of yourself and what was your inspiration to create NKN?
Yes, that's a good question. So actually, I had to spend quite a long time working in the communication or networking business. So initially with Nokia, and then with Google, and eventually before I started the NKN together with our founders. So there's always, even though I have been gone through a different projects or products and businesses, there's always kind of theme there. So the theme is really about innovation in the communication or networking business. So when I was in Nokia and also at Google later on, so we have done a few kind of internal startup or ventures that try to use either technology innovation or business innovation to create a disruption in the communication business or networking business. For example, very early on, there is this municipal Wi-Fi kind of movement. So everybody kind of like small coffee shops and the city can actually build up the free Wi-Fi services, so everybody can get kind of really good internet connection. That's was like only 10, 15 years ago. So I think all these kind of things happens, but at the end of the day, my founder Yambo and I find out that actually something really lacking is the business innovation, and the kind of blockchain and cryptocurrency really create that kind of magic ingredients adding into the technology we have already been thinking about, and that kind of spurred us to create this NKN, which is fundamentally how can you make the bandwidth and connectivity shareable, and as people who contribute can get the reward, and the people can use it, and by utilizing other people's resources. So that's kind of the overall theme and how I come about to create NKN together with our two co-founders.
Fantastic. Well, I always think that the best founder stories are those where people experienced a problem previously in their past life, and it's something that they decided to solve for. So I assume your time at Nokia gave you some insight into many of these challenges.
Yeah, definitely, because we work with people. Because the mantra, the kind of the slogan for Nokia has always been connecting people. So I think in this Web 3.0 decentralized internet space, how do you connect not only people but also smart devices? Kind of the something I still believe in, and I think we can do a good job of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that your intention is for NKN to provide networking infrastructure for Web 3.0. What does your platform provide or will provide that we don't have today that we need?
Right. So I think one of the things, like in the Web 3.0, so we have three major components. We have the computing, and we have storage, and we have networking. So give a very concrete example, because I assume the audience are mostly crypto familiar. So for computing, we have Ethereum and also now the Divinity. They are kind of internet computer, so they are like the world computer. And then in the storage space, you have Filecoin, Storage, and Saya. So they provide this decentralized storage. But at the end of the day, even everybody own their own data. You have individual computing units or this kind of autonomous computers. You still need something to communicate with each other, to send the data to each other. So what NKN is doing is really fit into this communication infrastructure side. So how can we enable every humans, every devices can actually communicate directly without going through any service, and also very securely and privately. So that's what we do. And that's why we think we are one of the three foundations for the Web 3.0.
Fantastic. So you mentioned privacy, and that is a growing concern. And going back to your kind of smart city analogy, I remember Boston, it was probably 15, 20 years ago, wanted the entire city
Right.
to be, enabled, right? So you had Wi-Fi all the time. You didn't have to be in a building. The city would give it to you everywhere
Right.
you went. But that raises some privacy concerns. So can you tell us a little bit about how the NKN protocol safeguards our privacy and our data?
Yeah, I think we secure privacy and security in a few different layers. First of all, so when you use NKN to communicate with each other, you use an NKN ID, which can be anonymized, which basically is anonymized unless you tell other people. And in the traditional communication network, you communicate with so-called IP address, but the IP address is a public information, so people can trace you, can block you, right? So that's the first level. So from identity point of view, you are kind of anonymous. The secondly is we enable by default end-to-end communication, end-to-end encryption, which means the communication parties, the two parties are over encrypted channel. And the third one, because we are a network of many, many kind of what kind of mining nodes or relay nodes, so between each relay nodes or mining nodes, the information is also encrypted. So doesn't matter if you hack into the device or hack into any kind of the mining nodes in between, you will not be able to kind of decode the data. And in addition, we also, when you kind of send data from me to you, for example, Tina, so the data will be chopped into tiny pieces, garbled, and then encrypted and sent through different paths to you. So even somebody control a large amount of relay nodes or mining nodes, and they still cannot really combine those little fragments together, because those are the three levels of kind of security and privacy we ensure.
Fantastic. So while solving privacy and speed with encryption and blockchain, sometimes there tends to be a compromise around scalability and compatibility.
Right.
How has NKN solved for these challenges?
I think one of the things we did was really separate the communication part from the blockchain part. So, there are some for even Ethereum, you can actually put a message in the transaction, right? So, but all the communication, it could be text, could be picture, could be video. They occupy lots of space. You cannot really put them into the blockchain because that will, first of all, it will be slow because you need the confirmation and the consensus. And secondly, the storage on the blockchain is limited. So we try to separate these two so they can scale separately and independently. So that's the reason the P2P networking side, when they transmit the actual data, does not go on the blockchain. So that's kind of enabled the kind of scalability, even when you go to, let's say, millions or billions of users and devices.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the blockchain itself. You have a consensus algorithm called Mocha. What are the pros? Well,
Yes.
tell us what Mocha is, and what are the pros and cons of a POR system versus a POS system?
Okay, so that's basically two questions. So I can start with what Mocha is, and then maybe comparing with other POW and POS system.
Right.
So Mocha, technology people always like abbreviations and make it more pronounceable. Mocha stands for Majority Vote Cellular Automata. So I know you are not a professor or research assistant in a university. So I mean the audience. So I will try to explain how does it actually work. So So one of the challenges, let me start with what's the challenge of the today's blockchain or consensus technology. So most of those traditional consensus algorithm or the new consensus algorithm, they are very much optimized for transaction per second, right? So
Mhm.
and then which means you cannot have a very large group of consensus nodes. For example, in many of the systems, you only have like 21 like validated node, and some of them, even larger ones, maybe have a few hundred, and even like the best ones, Ethereum and Bitcoin, have maybe 9,000 or 10,000. So one of the limitation is in a traditional or a typical consensus algorithm, everybody have to talk to each other. So if, for example, NKN network today have 100,000 nodes, then you'll have about 10 billion messages just for one consensus, right? So it's not scalable. So that's the reason we invented this Mocha, which is based on cellular automata. It's very simple. So if you think about the human kind of brain or the nerve system, you have probably have billions of neurons in it, but they are not fully connected. So each neuron is actually connected to maybe a few hundred nearby or neighboring neurons. But even when you kind of do the local communication, but actually your body is coherent, your thinking is coherent, so you are
Mhm.
actually an intelligent person. It's because this kind of local information using some mathematical proof, they can actually reach global consensus. So that's actually the kind of fundamental technology behind Mocha. So even though we have 100,000 nodes today, but each node only need to talk to maybe between 100 to 150 nodes. That is very kind of efficient in terms of communication and reach local consensus. And after 2 or 3 steps, because they propagate in an exponential way, and then the whole network can actually reach a consensus in just a few seconds. So that's kind of our unique contribution to the consensus algorithm. Now I get to the second question. How do you compare to like the PO, we call it proof of relay, compared to a typical POW or POS system? So proof of relay means every kind of mining node, you have to help the network to transmit data. So that's all about, right? So you help other people transmit data, relay traffic. So every time you do that, you kind of get a lottery ticket. The more you do that, the more lottery tickets you get. So when come the time it's for lottery, then you'll have higher chance to win the next kind of the mining reward. So
Mhm.
that's kind of, we call it very useful kind of work, useful proof of work. So I think there's lots of criticism. I'm not going to criticize any blockchain project, but I think it's for us, you only need to work when you are actually doing the useful work. That means relay traffic, and you don't need to consume any CPU or RAM when you're not doing that. So we are very much kind of efficient, energy efficient solution. And also the reason we don't do proof of stake is also because in most of the kind of proof of stake, the how to say, you have a limited amount of validators, right? So
Right.
that kind of, in our sense, kind of decrease the decentralization, especially for a communication network. We want to support billions of nodes and billions of devices. So the decentralization and a massive scale of kind of fully equal consensus nodes is very important to us. So that's really, it's a choice that we pick the proof of relay instead of the traditional POW or POS.
Interesting. So if I understand it correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like somewhere around 80% of the NKN nodes are located in the US. Does that heavy concentration in one geographical area produce any kinds of challenges for the network delivery?
Yeah, I think that's true. That's true. That's the current status. So I think about about 80% in the US and 20% the rest of the world. Maybe a little bit like a 70-30, because some of the cloud services like Google Cloud and Amazon Web Service, they, even though they have global data centers, they still report all the nodes in Mountain View, California. So
Mhm.
there are some kind of discrepancy, but still I would say yes, large majority of the nodes are in the US. Uh, the main reason is NKN, the main use case is network communication. So the nodes are favored if you have a very fast internet connection, And because the whole point is you are providing the connectivity for other people, right? So it's like a mining pool. So they always go to the place where electricity is the cheapest, right? So that's kind of natural selection of the purpose of NK network and why most of nodes land in the US, because US have the best internet backbone and the fastest backbone. So that's today. If we move forward into the future, I think two things will change that balance. Number one is today, lots of the NKN nodes are built on the cloud platform like AWS and Google Cloud, DigitalOcean, and etc. So I think uh, gradually we are working on some hardware partnership. So more and more NKN nodes will be running at home devices, like your home Wi-Fi router or home hard disk. And then when you have this kind of more diverse of the kind of hosting platform, which people run from home, you will see much more disperse of the nodes globally. That's number one. Number two is today, the mining reward is really purely based on how fast your internet connection is, right? But in the future, but not only in the future, but we're already ramping up a few commercial products we'll talk about maybe later. One is called NConnect. So that's a solution. It's like a home VPN solution. So it's how you can connect your phones back to your home security camera, for example, securely. So it's not the traditional sense of VPN. And that solution is also fee based. So people actually pay a monthly subscription, and then the device or the app will pay the miners in small increments called nano pay. So that's on top of the existing mining reward. So when that revenue starts to kind of pick up, then it depends on who is using our end connect solution. If it's mostly Asia, then the Asian miners will have the incentive to build more nodes in Asia. If it's Latin America, then the Latin American miners will build more nodes. So I think then gradually the actual user of the NKN will decide where in the world most of the NKN nodes will be.
Okay, well, we've got some partnership questions coming up, so I'll kind of hold that thought for now. We have a few questions around products and services. So I apologize in advance if these might be a little bit out of order, but these are direct from the community. So in what way does the proximity routing algorithm develop itself? Which steps does it take to make sure that the data takes the fastest possible relay?
Okay, yeah, I can answer this question. So, so in the NKN network, there's a two-way to transmit data between, for example, me and Tina. So one way is so-called kind of free way, because the all the miners are paid by the mining rewards, so they don't have to pay that particular kind of best effort traffic. So then I have to go through a few hops to reach Tina, because it have to be randomized, so we don't have people kind of gaming the system to earn more mining reward. So it's a random hop. But then you say, how can you ensure like it's a very good quality random hop, right? So every time when a mining node or need to hop to the next one, he has this mining node have, let's say, a selection of 50 next hops. And then from this 50 next hops are random generated by the system. So you cannot cheat. But then after the 50, you can always choose the fastest and the one with the lowest latency. So that's we call the proximity routing. So then you can pick the best next hop. So after a few hops, even though it's not the best hop, or like a path possible to get to you, Tina, but it's still each individual step they try to optimize for the next one. So it's decent. I mean, on average, it's a pretty fast route. So that's the first mode. It's kind of free transmission. Then you can say, now I have some large file I have to send to Tina in the fastest possible way. And then you can have a second way we call like a direct hop. So you can pick a particular mining nodes that have the best connection to you as well as to me, and then use that one as kind of one hop, kind of fastest path to transmit the data. In that case, you compromise a little bit on the privacy and security, but you can get the fastest speed you possible. So it's a compromise or trade-off. You want the absolutely anonymity and privacy, or you want the fastest speed and the lowest latency.
Okay, well, it's nice to have a choice because, sometimes it might not be sensitive information, but it might be urgent and vice versa.
Correct. But I mean, not like you are not secure, but you still have all the encryption you have. But maybe if there's only one node in between, he will probably know or she know the two counterparty, the IP address, for example, right? So that's unavoidable.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So, adoption is one of the most important factors that all sustainable blockchain projects should focus on to be more attractive to investors. Can you tell us about NKN's plans to accelerate adoption? What are some of the live use cases today in our society?
Right. So I think we actually done pretty well in this sense. So we have one to consumer product called N Mobile. It's like a secure private chat, a little bit like Signal, except that we don't have any service. Signal is pretty good in terms of security, but they still rely on a few servers, both for like a user login authentication and also for the relay the messages between the users. So we are kind of decentralized version, and mobile is a decentralized version of Signal. That's one. I don't think it's kind of so popular yet because we haven't really promoted it because we are still in the beta testing phase. We use it every day in our own kind of company, like eat our own dog food. But I think we want to make sure that we reach the maturity that kind of normal consumer can use, like my grandma or my parents can use. So that's one. The second one, main product we call NConnect. NConnect is, like I said, it's like a reverse VPN or like a private VPN. So how can I use my mobile phones or laptops securely connect to my home devices, like a security camera and network attached storage, like a hard disk at home? Those are it's a paid service. So we are actually already signed contract with the top three NAS or this home hard disk card disk companies, including Synology, QNAP, and Asustor. So those are already commercial product and generating revenue and generate kind of additional like a reward for the miners. Then the last one, we also have this content delivery network called the new kind of content delivery network. We signed contract with China's largest video platform called iQIYI, which is like China's version of Netflix, and we help them to distribute video content in China. So that is not global. So those
Wow.
are the few kind of main kind of use cases. It's already a product and it's already out in the market. And for us, it's really to ramping up and making more people use it.
Awesome, excellent. So the N mobile platform, who is your target audience? Who is this mass use? Is that what you're intending to replace things like Telegram, for example, or you mentioned Signal? And I guess my follow up question to that would be, what benefit does blockchain give to a chat platform?
Yes. I think people always say there's too many chat platforms already. So I think that's a valid point. So that's reason for Nmobile, this secure chat. The intention is not, at least in the beginning, to become like a super mass kind of product. So I think we need to find out those kind of niche kind of special niches for us that actually value privacy and security more than anything else. Right. So I think since the pandemic and since some of the accident, so people moved to Telegram and Signal. Like people used to use more WhatsApp and Facebook Messaging, etc. So now they moved to Telegram and especially Signal. So I think for us, I think Signal is kind of good benchmark for us, right? So really for people who value privacy and security, and then you can ask what's your differentiation, why you are better than. So one of the reasons we mentioned is Signal, even though it's very secure. I mean, they enable end-to-end encryption by default. You have like you can forget the message or delete the message after a certain period. So those are all the features are very critical. But still, I think it's a more traditional architecture. So it means you do have a few servers in between.
Yeah.
So when some either malicious party or nation state want to block you, it's very easy to target because they don't have to target your individuals, but they target those servers, right? Once you cannot access those servers for name resolution, for logging, for authentication, then you cannot use it, right? So actually, I know in a few countries, Signal is already blocked because when you have server, it's very easy to block. So
Right.
for us, I think we get rid of all the servers. So that's kind of interesting things because Nmobile actually just communicate directly between each other. So there's absolutely no server on it. And because the routing is dynamic, it's encrypted and also it's a kind of a garbed and fragmented. So unless somebody wants to ban all the 100,000 NKN servers, uh, I think it's very difficult to do that. But also to ban those servers means that you have to block basically the whole entire internet, right? So they're not like from one service provider, from one block of IP address, from one particular country or your geographical location. So I think those are the unique kind of strengths we have. Of course, we are very young products in the beta, so we don't have all the features, and it's not polished, and it's sometimes difficult to use. And also, for security, you have to remember your own uh, private key and take care of your own account. So if you get logged out and you forgot your private key, then nobody else can log in. So those are the things that for a normal user will have a little bit challenge or learning curve. But I hope, like for example, people are familiar with crypto and people
Mhm.
who really want this privacy. Like also not only crypto people. Actually, some of the people interested are people like a journalist without borders. So
Yeah.
they work in these highly confidential areas. They know that not only bad actors, but also even their nation state are spying on them. So they have to have a platform that is totally trustworthy and have nowhere they can actually monitor or even send a kind of search warrant or subpoena to, right? Because
Mhm.
that's how you get information. So I hope we will start with those kind of niche groups and eventually become more popular with the general public.
Fantastic. Well, I do think that as we see breaches and hacks, and especially kind of in the cryptocurrency space, people are, I think, more privacy aware. And they're more security aware, I think. So, there
Right.
does seem like a natural affinity between, your average cryptocurrency user who, may well be responsible for their own keys anyway, and understands that with that level of privacy also comes some responsibility, right? To manage your own
Right.
stuff.
Yeah, and just kind of wild thought, like for example, in the future, for crypto.com, you have a really successful app, right? You want to introduce some social kind of features, messaging features. We'll be happy to provide that messaging capability if there's any interest. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll pass that along. Okay, so
Yeah.
you mentioned NConnect earlier, and that it's basically a decentralized VPN. I can think of a few ways, but why don't you tell us what its advantages are over your standard VPN?
Right. So as I mentioned, it's not like a traditional sense of VPN. It's more like a kind of almost like a mini reverse kind of VPN. So for example, you have a home device or a mobile device or laptop, you can securely connect back to your home devices. Or if you have like office, like enterprise, so how can you enable your mobile workforce to connect securely back to your like intranet or your the office network, right? So that's kind of the main use case. So the way we do it is uh, in a traditional kind of like a secure remote access solution. The problem is you have to expose your kind of your home device or office kind of private devices or hard disk or servers to the external world. So I guess you have probably heard some of the horror stories about webcam got hacked and so people can see neighbors baby cam and stuff like that, right? So
Yeah.
one of the things we want to get rid of is without service, right? So for all those security cameras in the world today, they all rely on some cloud service. If you are outside of your home and want to see a video feed of your home security camera, so whenever you have that server, it becomes honeypot, right? So everybody want to try to hack into it, and if they hack into it, you can see thousands of users or millions of users
Yeah.
video and other information. So that's one. Get rid of the server. The second thing is we don't even expose the kind of your home device or office device to the external world. So in a traditional kind of, it's a little bit technical, but in traditional way, they need to open some IP address or ports in your home device or office device, so your workforce or yourself can actually access it. For us, we don't need to do that. So your device or your home device or office devices can run as if as today. So they only need to have a normal external internet connection, and you don't need to open anything. And we can already connect this kind of secure connection by our mesh network. So that gives you extra level of security. So without servers, and also even your home device and home servers and home hard disks will not have any access to anybody in the world. So other than you who have the private key and public key to access it. So I think the NConnect have this unique feature. So I think that's the reason why the three Nest vendors, they all have launched commercial products with us, and it's more like you pay $5 per about $5 per month, and then when you're using it, you are consuming the data, and then each individual kind of consumption of data will be paid in what we call a nano pay, like a tiny fraction of NKN to the miner who provide the service. So that's a very kind of in a way, we want to create kind of data, kind of Amazon marketplace. So in the end, so whoever uses the data, who provides data, will be able to interact directly with each other over the blockchain, and do not need a company like NKN in between to charge you a commission or or like make a cut or see your data. So that's our kind of vision for the End Connect.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, those financial incentives are what seem to cause some of the glitches in other models, right? And this seems to be more peer-to-peer. If you're using it, you're paying for it, and you're paying the person that's providing it.
Right.
Great. Okay. All right. So I mentioned we were going to talk a little bit about partnerships and how to get involved with NKN. So the first question is, how do you help startups to participate and launch projects on the NKN platform?
Yes, I think there's a few things, right? So both from technology side, from the commercial side, and also from funding side. So we have done different ways to support the kind of the community to develop application on top of it. One way is really kind of reward the kind of communication, the applications that build on NKN. So last year, every year actually, in the last 2 years, we have this so-called NKN Community Award. So we give a very large award to the best kind of community application. And last year was called application called Surge. Surge is like the BitTorrent, but with a better privacy and better security. So we rewarded 2 million NKN tokens for that project last year. So that's one way that we reward them afterwards. And also every month, and we look at the different kind of developer community activities and even like social community activities, and then we see people who contribute to the NKN project, and we give them kind of more small amount of reward. So that's kind of ongoing. So that's more kind of achievement based, right? So if you've done something and that's amazing and the community like it, improve adoption, we'll give reward. And then, but moving into the future, I think we need to be more proactive as well. So in terms of first of all, make it very easy for any application developers to develop the application on NKN. One of the good news about NKN is you can develop any application like a future of Facebook or future WhatsApp on NKN without any blockchain knowledge. So we make it SDK in many, many different languages, and also in such a simple way, you do not need to understand smart contract or Solidity in order to develop on top of NKN. So I think that's quite a bit of hurdle, because when you think about developer, there are maybe 5 million to 6 million or maybe more in the world. And then when you say, okay, blockchain or like a smart contract developer, then drops like 100% or 99% become maybe, 100,000 or 200,000. So that's reason, that's one. And also we'll start like a academy or boot camp, so we can train people how to architect the application in a decentralized way. Because I think using SDK is not difficult, but now all of a sudden you don't have any server to, like almost all application developers, they always have a server somewhere. Now you don't have it. How can you put that logic into your application itself, right? So it's kind of needs training. So that's the second part. And the last part is really incentive. So we do think that some projects or some teams or some individuals have a great idea and they want to do something on NKN. Sometimes it's not enough. We reward them like 6 months later or 12 months later, because they will be starved before that, right? So we also think about different ways how we can invest like more like a traditional like a venture fund kind of point of view. How can we give some starting funding to those, or even tokens to those teams, so they can build some amazing application that without worrying about their livelihood or the other things. So those are the three things we will do to improve the community or developer adoption.
That's awesome. Well, you answered like 3 questions in one, so that's
Oh,
perfect.
okay.
No, that's great. So let's talk a little bit. So we've talked about the community and how they're incentivized and
Right.
rewarded to get involved. What about your business partnership strategy? For example, the question is, how many American companies are acquiring the use of NKN? So what's kind of your enterprise business partnership strategy, I think is the question.
Yeah, I think in the very beginning of the project, or at least in the first few years, we worked pretty hard on, I mean, European and as American kind of telecom carriers, like for example Comcast and etc. Or like T-Mobile, etc. But we find that a traditional telecom company or the large companies, they tend to be risk averse, and especially even though there are some clear use cases they can benefit from NKN technology, but it's a very long, lengthy process, and also they are not willing to take the risk that because some projects associated with blockchain or cryptocurrency, right? So that's kind of traditional case. So we kind of pivoted a bit and say, okay, so if we are not working with those traditional telecom companies, if we look for enterprise customer, where should we look? So we look for these content owners like IT. That happened to be we have a strong business development team in China. So we signed the first kind of CDN contract with our content delivery contract with IT, which is in China. And then we move on to the second product, which is NConnect, which is kind of secure remote access solution. And we start with all the NAS solutions. So the NAS vendors like Synology, QNAP, and ASUS happen to be they are based in Taiwan because they are like very good with hardware business. They're a global company, but they're headquartered in Taiwan. So
Mhm.
that's today. So and we are actually now working with a few companies in the US and also Europe, and to further develop the end connect solution as well as some of the enterprise solutions for security cameras and for the secure chat with a particular niche. So those are partnership and enterprise deals will come, I think, hopefully in 2021, maybe toward 2022, because those companies actually normally work faster. And also now we actually, because we are also listed on Coinbase, which is a major US exchange, also crypto.com. So now we have this US dollars, and we are kind of more legitimate in terms of large enterprises because now you have US dollar on ramp, euro on ramp, and etc. So I think it's much easier to go back to those large carriers and companies. Say, okay, now we are vetted by these large platforms. So now, are you more confident we can move on with our previous discussion? So I think we'll see some partnership happening or commercial contract happening hopefully this year, latest early next year.
Awesome. Okay, thanks for that. So when we started, I asked you what your inspiration was when you created NKN. So what I'd like to know now is, given everything we've talked about over the last half an hour, how much have your original plans for the company changed since you began? So you mentioned a pivot,
Mhm.
and what has that meant for your product development and your community development during this period?
Yeah, I think when we first started, the Web 3.0 is not as prominent as today, right?
Mm,
So at that time, we already have seen this essay by Chris Dixon from Andrews and Horowitz called
mhm.
"Why Decentralization Matters." So he's spelled out the reason why Web 2.0 is inherently have this problem, like they compete with their users and compete with their creators. So why Web 3.0 can actually kind of get rid of this problem and make it much more. So that's the reason. Uh, but at that time, I think we very much coming from a communication background, so we're thinking, okay, maybe we should work with carriers, right? In the very beginning, maybe let's work with Singtel or maybe T-Mobile or Comcast and see if that can change things. But it seems like I mentioned, they are both slow and it's a risk averse. So then we pivoted and we think, okay, let's go full force on Web 3.0. So we really serve the companies that are more internet native companies, software companies, right? And then we get lots of attraction and also the contracts start to flow. So I think that's kind of so now we kind of getting clearer. It's become clearer and clearer. Say, okay, if Web 3.0 is the future and the decentralized future, and we want to be one of the three foundations, the networking. How do we enable this free secure private communication between any people, any devices. So that's kind of coming to today's vision. And so I do think we have done a little bit pivoting, and the vision has been evolving. And also, I think it's become clearer as well for us.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds like it. So you mentioned the roadmap for 2021. Is there anything else on the roadmap this year or going into next year that you want to make people aware of so that they can get excited about it?
Yeah, I think there are a few things, right? I will talk about both technology side and also product side and also commercial side. So the NKN mainnet has been launched for more than 2 years. Sorry, almost 2 years from 2019. So it's been pretty robust and battle kind of tested. So
Mhm.
we are pretty happy with it. And now with the growth, we have almost 100,000 servers or nodes globally. But there are a few areas we do need to improve. So one of the things is really a kind of smart contract support. So today, because we are very kind of purpose-built blockchain, so we do not have a more general purpose kind of computing engine like smart contract. So we do think that might be something very important. And I'll talk to this about a little bit about how we can enable multi-chain later on. I saw one of the questions
Yeah.
come later. So smart contract is on our roadmap. And the second thing is really how can we enable more home nodes, right? So how can we enable different hardware disk, like all-in-one hardware solution? So for example, if people buy this, let's say NKN Wi-Fi router, they can install at home. Not only they can do the normal Wi-Fi stuff, but also uh, native is NKN node, and people can use smartphone to check if they get some reward and etc. So make it very simple and kind of mass adoption type of product. So that's high on our agenda. So that's on the technology and product side. And also, I think one of the things we have been thinking is so today we are totally built on top of the existing internet. So you can use whatever Wi-Fi connection or 5G, 4G connection or home internet connection. It's a cable or fiber. So that's very good because that's more like Uber model. You can utilize existing capacity as much as possible to
Yeah.
really improve the efficiency of existing infrastructure. But at a certain point, you need to say, okay, now we squeeze out most of the efficiency. Now, how can we get to the next step, right? So then you need a new infrastructure. And I think one of the most promising area is really the satellite internet by SpaceX and Amazon Project Cooper, and also the OneWeb, and there's many upcoming satellite technology. So one of the kind of fundamental differences, satellite internet is by default global, right? It's not
Mhm.
like T-Mobile is in the US and Vodafone in UK. So all of a sudden you have this new infrastructure that's global. I think this is significant. Right? It's not limited by geography or a particular region. If we can combine the NKN, which is sharing, uh, um, and to improve it to become a foundation for building new infrastructures. Let's say uh, a very ambitious model. Let's say, how about the community can fund the Project Cooper satellite launch, right? So everybody can be a partial owner of one of the new satellite, and not only you are user of the satellite internet connection, but also you become a partial owner of that new infrastructure. That will be powerful because then it's not like a traditionally the AT&Ts, the T-Mobile, they own the infrastructure, they provide the service, so it's very kind of centralized model. But now you have a very crowd model. Not only the usage is crowd-based, but also the ownership and deployment is crowd-based. I think that will be fundamentally important for the evolution or the revolution of the communication business. So that's on the product and technology side. I think we are very excited about those things. We are in discussion with the companies in these spaces. So that's one. And then talk about business. I touched upon business regarding those hardware and the satellite companies. We also need to kind of how can we enable some of the developers more incentivized to build on top of the NKN? So I think the token economics and also a more kind of better kind of venture funding model need to be solved, and so more developers and more companies will build on top of that. So I think and also of course we already have this N mobile product. We need to make it more more mainstream, and also the N-Connect product, we want to expand into different devices. Today is mostly network attached storage or hard disk, and we expand to security cameras and also to enterprise intranet. So those are by themselves a large market. So I think we should have lots of business opportunities in those domains.
Fantastic. That's incredible. That's a lot on your roadmap.
Yes.
So we didn't talk about multi-chain functionality. What are your plans for that?
Yeah, I think the multi-chain is more. We have been thinking about for a while. So we even studied Polkadot as well, and so one of the kind of the kind of the point that kind of prevent us to grow faster is really we still have ERC20 tokens and also mainnet tokens. So you always have to do swap and the conversion and stuff like that. So more kind of elegant way is, right, why don't we just have them coexist? And so because in our mainnet we don't have smart contract. If we have a smart contract system on the mainnet, so we either put more like ERC20, like an EVM kind of solution, then we have a full compatibility with BSCs and Ethereum, so you can build an easy bridge, or we can use Polkadot way. We still have our own kind of unique smart contract or system, but we can use a multi-chain solution. I think there's a few different things we can do, right? Because it's very important for the ecosystem. First of all, this free two-way kind of exchange or like leveraging of the mainnet and the ERC20. That's one. The second thing is, quite often our solution or products, you get income in fiat, like US dollars or euros or RMB, but then you need to pay the miners in NKN. So there's a particular way of, because for most people, you don't want to pay $3 this month and $5 tomorrow, next month, and etc. They want certain kind of traditional pricing model, so kind of stable fiat model. But then the token inherently will change price all the time, right? How can you enable either a stable coin kind of solution, or you can have active kind of leveraging or kind of some kind of traditional kind of fintech solution to enable that hedging between the fiat and the NKN token. So those are the things that are much better done by a multi-chain or smart chain kind of solution. So I think those are the kind of potential use cases once we enable the smart contract that will make it much easier. I don't think it's the only solution, but will make it much easier and also more automated, and you can audit it. And so, yeah, I think it's probably people will like it more from the community point of view.
Brilliant. Bruce, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you, and you're working on some things that are really, dear to my heart. So I definitely want you to accelerate this stuff and get it out of beta and into my house so that I can connect my Ring doorbell and not feel like somebody is going to hack into it. I think that's fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah, we just need to make sure it's simple enough that even your toddler or your friend can operate. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. The simpler, the better. That's always the best for adoption, for sure. Is there anything else that you that we didn't ask you about today that you wanted to let the community know before we wrap up?
I think we covered quite a large area of things. So I think we really kind of appreciate the opportunity to be listed on crypto.com and also the crypto.com exchange. So I think you really make sure that the usability and the adoption is kind of the foremost of your focus. So I think that's a fantastic job you did, and also the credit card you made. I think our CTO actually used the crypto.com credit card, so from a long time ago. So I think that's kind of the more people you are not afraid of use crypto and more people can onboard, it's basically all we want to do, make the pie bigger, right? So that's what I think NKN is trying to do by getting the chat app or home security, small secure access solution, etc. So make it more approachable to normal people like my young son or daughter, or even my grandma. So I think that's kind of fundamental kind of intention of all the crypto projects.
Indeed, yes. And I think at this point, all tides, raise all boats together. So we're still in this together in this adoption period of time. So it's a pleasure. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you to our audience as well for spending time with us. If your question was asked during today's AMA with Bruce, then you may have won a share of the NKN prize pool. So if you have, it will be deposited into your app within the next 30 days. You can follow Bruce on Twitter at Z Bruce Lee, all one word, and NKN at nkn_org. Bruce, thank you so much for joining us, and we'd love to have you back and hear about how the projects are going in a few months' time.
Yeah, thanks, Tina, and really appreciate the this chat. And one last call that if you're interested, you can try out our app, and you can try to develop application for NKN. We're also looking for talent as well, and run the NKN node, which is really simple, 5 minutes work. So yeah, try it out, and we'll be happy to hear what you feel. Thank you, Tina.
Where should our viewers go to do that? To the website?
Oh, you can go to our webpage. Yeah, website. nkn.org should have all the information there. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining us, and see you again next time.
Okay. See you.